Okay, so today is the 20. I don't know what to do because it's actually one day later, but we were supposed to pay homage to Viljo Revell yesterday on the 25th of January, but because we had too many celebrations then, I will do it today on the 26th. So, but let's be kind about this and not too judgmental. I will talk about this important Finnish architect, and let me read a few things about him. So he was, as you can see, born on the 25th of January 1910 and died in November 1964. Unfortunately, he died at 54. So Viljo Gabriel Revell was a Finnish architect of the functionalist school. In Finland, he is best known for the design of the Glass Palace and Palace Hotel, both in Helsinki. Internationally, Revell is best known for designing the new City Hall of Toronto, Ontario, Canada. So Revell, originally spelled Revell with a W, was born in Vaasa in 1910 and graduated from this college or lyceum in Romania. And in 1928, he graduated as an architect from the Helsinki University of Technology in 1937, so at 27. He made his architectural breakthrough already the year he graduated, when he, together with fellow students, you read the names, won the architectural competition for the design of the Lassi Palazzi, which had originally been intended as a temporary building comprising shops, restaurant, and cinema, but which became one of the landmarks of Finnish white functionalist architecture. His next major work was the so-called industrial center, comprising offices, hotel, roof terrace, restaurant, and ground floor shops situated on Helsinki's South Harbour seafront. The building was also based on a competition-winning proposal made together with this architect, Petieu, and was completed in 1952 in time for the Helsinki Olympic Games. Revell's international breakthrough came with the winning in 1956-58 of the architectural competition for the design of the Toronto City Hall, which he designed together with fellow Finnish architects, and you see their names there. The building was completed in 1965, the year following Revell's premature death. So in 1943, at a time when post-war reconstruction was already an important topic of discussion, Revell, along with Alvar Aalto, Arne Ervi, and Kai Englund, was one of the instigators of the Finnish Building Information File, the Finnish version of a building standards file to assist in standardization of building practices and component sizes. The work was financed by the Finnish Association of Architects under the name of Standardization Institute. As part of the research, the group had contacts with a similar organization in Germany, run by Ernst Neufert. In June 1943, while the war was still going on, Alvar Aalto, Ervi, and Revell, together with these architects, traveled to Germany at the invitation of Neufert to witness the German building standardization efforts, including the construction of government buildings designed by Albert Speer for the Nazi government. Interesting news here that Alvar Aalto did this. I wonder how he felt about it. This was the man, Revell, yeah, he died at 54. Functionalism is a little bit problematic to me, especially today, although there were some good works done in the name of so-called functionalist architecture. He was a good architect, and we are going to see some examples of his work. I like his watch. My father used to have such a watch. I'm not so sure about the belt, but the watch is nice. And here is the man, the Finnish architect, Viljo Revell. Some drawings, just a few. This is the project for the Toronto. You probably know this is a famous building or complex of buildings in Toronto, and he was the author together with the other two architects, and it was built. And as I read, it was finalized 1 year after he died. These are it's possible these were the competition entries, the material submitted for the competition. In essence, a very simple scheme, but you know, with something that symbolically and aesthetically attracted the jury, so they won. Now, significant buildings, some significant buildings. This is not a very long presentation, but I'm happy I can talk about him too. 1935, the Crystal Palace, which I already mentioned, in Helsinki. And here it is. You know, it's an architecture that now doesn't look so interesting, but you know, you have to understand at that time, 90 years ago almost, it was, if not shocking, was you know, significantly different. So a commercial center, essentially. You know, this kind of architecture was practiced after the war a lot, and but less before the war. Some elegant, you know, details, so to speak, as you can see here, this stair going upwards to that interior balcony. So this is again an architecture from 1935, so from 87 years ago. Finland has an excellent architecture and had some excellent architects. Alvar Aalto, and yesterday we talked about his wife, Aino Aalto, and you know, you wonder, why is it Finland the country of such good architecture? Well, I don't know. It's perhaps a question worth addressing. From 1939, this office building in Vasa, but I don't have pictures, sorry. Now this chapel, which I like, in Tampere in Finland, well, compare it with the churches we build. You know, the churches we build are totally uncreative. All of them, including the Cathedral of the People, so to speak. Totally uncreative. We don't create anything. Well, this man in this chapel created something. You might like it, you might not like it, but it has an austerity which I think cannot be divorced from spirit. And, you know, it has a purity. I like this building. And I like even the materials he used. This concrete, yes, is unfinished. You know, talking about finishes, in my opinion, finishes are a little bit problematic and not very modern. Why? Because the interests of modernity, theoretically at least, were towards sincerity. That's why, like we had in brutalism, you know, you expose the materials as they are. You expose brick as brick, wood as wood, concrete as concrete, and so on. You don't hide them behind plaster or I don't know what. You don't hide. You see here, it's a very honest building. You understand it immediately. Again, some people might like it, some people might not like it, but I think this building communicates sincerity. And you cannot have faith and you cannot worship in the absence of sincerity. If the so-called worship or faith are dominated by you know, pudicity or you know, labyrinthical attempts to avoid truth, they dissolve, they disappear, in my opinion. You know, a building should be a confession. You confess your faith through materials, whatever they are. So the level of sincerity must be very high, if not total. Anyway, it's a modern chapel that this Viljo Revell built, again, before the war. Now, the Palace Hotel from 1948. Why it is called palace, I don't know. It's a hotel. It's a modern hotel, you know, nice and clean. It would be appreciated even today in some circles, meaning in our schools of architecture. But again, let us not forget, this was built 90 years ago or so, 85 or whatever. Well, since then, architecture changed. And we still build like this, don't we? And we shouldn't, because we are in the 21st century. We are not in the 20th century before the Second World War. If you do such a building today, here now, it would be very appreciated. It would be considered excellent, good. But this is not our time, and it's not our place. Anyway, at that time it was okay. 1953, a tower block in Tapiola, but it was also called in this way. It's the same project from 1953, Taskumati houses in Tapiola, also in Finland. You see here, he is more adventurous, aesthetically speaking, 2 blocks of flats, essentially. So this is Viljo Revell, and soon we'll go to the more spectacular contemporary work of UN Studio and Ben van Berkel, whose birthday was yesterday. Now, this was a factory, but I don't know if I found pictures. The knitwear factory, no, I didn't. I searched actually dramatically yesterday, I couldn't. Now, this is an art museum, which was actually a villa transformed into an art museum but it was built after the Second World War in Helsinki. And it does look like a house, like an opulent house, like a villa, if you want to use the word villa. Although to me, the word villa is a little bit bourgeois and a little bit pathetic. And, you know, maybe it's not so appropriate for our time, but people still use it, of course. So this is a house, a large, opulent, luxurious house, which became a museum. Yes, he was a functionalist and a rationalist to an extent, but he had also, you know, aesthetical aspirations, and we are going to see those aesthetical aspirations, particularly in the last project I will show, the City Hall of Toronto in Canada. In Finland, of course, what is very seductive is nature. So, you know, I'm not trying to say that it doesn't matter how you build, the beauty of the trees is still the beauty of the trees. But, you know, with such beautiful trees, you know, part of the show, so to speak, is saved. Because even if you don't quite look with great pleasure towards the building, you do see the trees. Now, the city center office building from 1960 from Helsinki, you know, an office building, you know, an office building as it used to be built then. I guess correctly built to an extent, not, you know, unpleasant, but maybe aesthetically at least not very, very creative, maybe. Although it's possible in terms of details and functionalities, I am more attracted by the train station in Helsinki, which you see here, a corner of the work of a great Finnish architect, Eliel Saarinen, the father of Eero Saarinen, truly a very important architect himself. So the Finnish Ministry of Defense, I only have one picture or two here. It's the same picture, but the next one is a little bit a larger version of it. That's the only picture I discovered on the web. I do not insist here. And then we go to the office block in Vasa, now called the Revell Center. Kind of similar to what we saw in Helsinki, not great differences. Well, maybe I am a nostalgic man, it's possible, but I kind of like more this architecture than this one. Although I understand that after the war, there was a need for, you know, novelty, a different, you know, like a rebirth, and we couldn't build any longer like before the war or even, you know, earlier. modern architecture, you know, sincere, functionalist, structurally correct, and so on. But the interior has some interesting things. I mean, this is a pleasant space, and even, you know, courageously, you know, expressed through, you know, this thing that penetrates, you know, longitudinally the whole thing. And I like the skylighting system. It's, you know, it's well done. The Scandinavians, let's include the Finnish, they are good at doing, you know, correct works and doing them well. Anyway, so another work in that city, Vasa, where he was born. And now we arrive. Unfortunately, I couldn't find the picture, but I would have liked to find, because it's apparently very similar to the Toronto City Hall, which we are going to see next, a water tower in Tapiola with a disc-shaped tank similar to what you will see in Toronto. And now we arrive at this most important work of this architect, but he didn't work alone. From 1966, so from, you know, almost 60 years ago, 56 years ago, the new City Hall of Toronto in Ontario, Canada. And tomorrow I will talk about a Romanian architect who studied at UAUM and who was very successful, not in Toronto, but in Montreal, Dan Hanganu. Bravo to him. So you probably know this building because it is very famous. He is the architect, you know, during the construction of this major work. So welcome to Toronto. They did this, you know, this team of Finnish architects. They won the competition, and they built this city hall in Toronto. You see in this picture, it is clear that you cannot divorce form from function. You know, they come together, and this building shows it clearly. In order for the building to have integrity, form and function should manifest themselves simultaneously and with equal force, if I am to use this word. It's an architecture, you know, maybe it's a little bit too explicit and too clear, although it has some mystery, if we are to call it so, because of these curved two buildings, and then the curvatures present also in this, you know, large gathering space in the center. It's a good building, yes. Is it very innovative, or I don't know, but it has a dignity and it has a sculpturalness, and if you see it, it's almost unavoidable that you think that this is a place for people coming together, and the project, it's a building occupying a central position in the life of the city. I mean, at all levels, not just physically, but also in terms of its meaning. So this is the City Hall of Toronto in Canada, designed by Viljo, Revell, and you know, a few collaborators. I should have known their names too, but what can you do? There are so many names to remember that it's hard to remember all. Anyway, but we see here, and we'll end very soon, this short presentation on Viljo, Revell, that the sculptural, you know, expression of a building does matter, you know, and the symbolism of the shapes you employ. You cannot do a building which pretends to be you know, the heart, political, social, and so on, governmental, of the city, without addressing the symbolism that you know, the central position of the building should express. Is it futuristic? I don't know. Maybe too explicitly so. You know, you would say this is like an unidentified flying object, but it's already a déjà vu in a way. But it is, in a way, a courageous building, because to make a building of this size I mean, look at its height and its dimensions here completely without windows. It could have been, crashing, overwhelming. But because of this treatment of the opaque, very large surface, it's not actually oppressive, I think. Although, again, it's probably one of the largest surfaces in architecture without any window in the architecture of the world. But that's exactly why, and here is an example, it matters so much how you treat the surface of the material you work with. This is not done, it's not just a blank, but it's more here. It's the proportion of the volumes they chose to work with. The curvature also matters because if this was straight, having exactly the same surface in terms of square meters would have been probably deadly. I mean, this is twice as tall as this, I don't know, 10, 12, 15 floors high building. So it's quite big. Having no windows could have been problematic. And now we go to a very interesting architect who was born yesterday. I'm talking about Ben van Berkel from UN Studio. And on the beginning of February, he will give a lecture online. I just saw an announcement on Arch Daily. He is a very important architect today, and you will see some very, almost modern, intriguing, spectacular works. And they are building a lot these days. They are very highly valued. So Ben van Berkel, happy birthday to you, sir. A little bit late. Let's read a little bit about him. So Ben van Berkel was born in 1957, is a Dutch architect, founder and principal architect of the architectural practice UN Studio. With his studio, he designed, among others, the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, the Möbius House in the Netherlands, the Mercedes-Benz Museum in Stuttgart, Germany, Arnhem Central Station, the Singapore University of Architecture and Design, Raffles City in Hangzhou in China, and numerous other buildings. Ben van Berkel studied architecture at the Revell Academy in Amsterdam and at the Architectural Association again and again in London, receiving the AA diploma with honors in 1987. I will stop here a little bit to stress again how important education is. The Architectural Association in London prepared architects, in my opinion, who still move the world dramatically. I think of, it's an estimate, and I have no way to prove it mathematically, but I have a feeling that about 80% of the architects who matter today and mattered in for some time now came through the Architectural Association. This most unusual school, which was and is a continuous experimental laboratory, and obviously it works. If you search for Architectural Association on the web and you go at the bottom of the Wikipedia page and you see the alumni, the people who graduated from there, who studied there, some didn't graduate but studied there, you will be amazed. Only very well-known architects. They have 3 Pritzker prizes. They have 2, I think, Sterling prizes, the most important architecture prize in Great Britain. I mean, it's incredible. And it's a school which when, what was his name? I forgot his name. The dean who ran the school when Zaha Hadid and Rem Koolhaas were studying there, they didn't even have a curriculum. They didn't. And talking about elephants, Ms. Mitru mentioned, eating an elephant, although I never thought of eating an elephant. Apparently, the dean at that time I keep thinking of Brodsky, but Brodsky was a famous Russian poet. No, not him. I read once that he came at least once to the school on an elephant. Boyarsky, Alvin Boyarsky. Alvin Boyarsky was the dean of Architectural Association when this most famous architect, Zaha Hadid and Rem Koolhaas, studied there. And he was very unconventional and very open towards experimentation. As I said, they didn't have a curriculum, and it worked. Anyway, back to Ben van Berkel, who also studied there a little bit later than Zaha Hadid and Rem Koolhaas. In 1988, he and his then wife, Caroline Bos, set up an architectural practice in Amsterdam named Van Berkel and Bos Architectuur Bureau, which realized, amongst other projects, the Carburg office building and the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, which is beautiful. And the Erasmus Bridge in Rotterdam, in some presentations, is even connected with the bird by Constantin Brâncuș. I saw images of the bridge and the reference to Brâncuș. In 1998, Van Berkel and Bos relaunched their practice as UN Studio, where UN stands for United Network. This is the man, Ben van Berkel, very successful in the field of architecture today. He is considered by many as one of the most important architects today, and again coming towards us, so to speak, via Architectural Association. And via, if I can say so, the Netherlands, this country which continuously brings to the fore excellent architects and excellent artists. And I wonder why the population of the Netherlands is just slightly smaller than the population of Romania. Why is it that the Netherlands are so significant in the field of architecture and art? Because they experiment, because they are open, because they are hardworking, and so on. Here they are. I don't know if they are still married. I read, before that it's, when they were, it's possible they are not any longer married, but maybe they still work together. I don't know. I don't know how two people who are not any longer married can continue to work together. I couldn't, but they can. But then they are Dutch. So some drawings by Ben van Berkel, conceptual and all, rapidly done. Yes, different from the drawings of Bernini and Michelangelo or Raphael. But then who draws like that today? Even Picasso said, I learned to paint like Raphael in 4 years, but it took me a lifetime to paint like a child. So I guess we don't believe any longer in that kind of graphic representation. But this kind of sketch did become buildings and will become buildings. I wonder what we'll do if you present in school such sketches, to your professors and say, hey, this is my concept. Look at it. It will probably not be taken seriously, but then you could say, hey, wait, I'll show you similar sketch by Ben van Berkel, one of the most important architects today. Let's start with the Erasmus Bridge, and let's salute Erasmus, the great scholar from Rotterdam. This is in Rotterdam. Erasmus was truly one of the greatest scholars in the world. And I paid homage to him on his birthday when I talked about Rotterdam, the city of the future, as it is called. Look at this. It's splendid. It's simple. Yes, Calatrava also built some bridges like this. It's an engineering work, an engineered work, which is also aesthetically potent and impressive. It's simple. It's sculptural. It's dynamic, it functions, it has everything. The Dutch, as you probably know, are considered very pragmatic people, and they are pragmatic. But strangely, perhaps, their pragmatism becomes also aesthetically valuable and inciting. So this is again Ben van Berkel and Catherine Bos, the founders of UN Studio, and they should be known because indeed is an architectural practice of great importance for our time. Now, a museum from 1995 to 1998, also in the Netherlands. So almost, well, 25 years ago, 27 years ago. This is an initial sketch, the flow of functions of the circulation. The building is less, rococo, but it's a well-built, well-designed building. Look even at the lighting system outdoors, it's elegant and functional and a little bit sculptural. The building, yes, it's you would say rational and so on, but inside has some surprises. It's an early work by UN Studio, very well executed, as you can see, and I personally like the most the visualization, the graphic visualization of the circulation within the museum. Of course, that is important in a museum. But what if you do a museum where the visitor could get lost, like a labyrinth? This is something that Su Fujimoto these days tried and tries, when he talks about, being function between function and no function. Or like in that library he built in Japan, where he had used two so-called concepts, searchability and strawability. Searchability being, the usual use of a library. That what book you want to find. You go to the librarian gives you a number, and then you go to the shelf and you find the book and you take it home or read it in the library. That's searchability. You search for it. But then Su Fujimoto employed also the concept of strawability, where you lose yourself through the library, kind of absent-minded, like a wanderer, and you discover books whose existence you didn't know, you didn't even know. So he welcomed chance encounters. And I think it's important to create a space for chance encounters too. So not everything is controlled, through the will of the architect. Now, of course, Ben van Berkel here drew, but even here, you can and you could, and probably many people do, get kind of lost. Because you're not going to, not everybody is going to, so which way should I go? It's still kind of labyrinthical in a way. And I like this fact, actually, that the prismatic building is promoting rather, rococo, if I'm to call it so, and labyrinthical circulation within it. I'm absolutely sure some people would visit the museum not following this imaginary convoluted line that the routing schema. It's a schema, but life is not schematic. Now the Möbius house from 1993-1998, also in the Netherlands. I have a feeling that the UN Studio and Ben van Berkel try to express some kind of a complexity that results from the two conflicting entities. Like you see here, is this, these two buildings almost make love to each other. And it's actually one building, but it has two parts that intertwine. And, it creates a complexity which does not exclude conflict. Towards the outside, the building has, maybe it's not so apparent, this intertwining that we saw in the plan. Sorry about the pictures; they are not great. I should have searched for more pictures, but all in all, it's another, experimental architecture done in the Netherlands. The expression towards the outside is rather, I mean, explicitly modern, contemporary. But you saw in the plan, in the graphics of the plan, that there is more to it. It's not a prism, like in functionalist architecture. There are complexities here at work. Unfortunately, there are also these huge surfaces of glass. I am rather an adversary of such large surfaces of glass, and the reason I am is because they are, without doubt, not sustainable. You need here a lot of, artificially induced air, and as Philip Johnson said, if you build a glass house, and he knew what he was talking about because he was living in one he designed, you have to be worried about the electrical bills, because yes, where you use so much glass, there is loss of heat. There is, there are all kinds of problems. And I'm not so sure that the illusion of communicating with the world is actually more than an illusion. I'm not sure of it. I'm not sure that a smaller window doesn't do the same job. Maybe in terms of sentiment, of emotion, maybe even better. But I like the plans. I like this intertwining of two bodies in a way. This is two in one and one in two in a way, and that's why I said it's like a couple making love. Yes, this building is the expression of that intersection between two bodies, and as such it is geometrically erotical, if I am to use this expression. There is a conflict here, of course. There is conflict, there is complexity, there is distortion, there is disjunction, and yet they are one, they are together. Let's contemplate a little more the plans, because I think they are, of course, this is a large house, as you can see, but yes, I think the plans are enticing, they are interesting. This makes me remember what the great German poet Goethe said, that he was looking in the Black Forest of Germany for the Urplant, the primordial plant, the plant that he thought all the other plants were born from. Yeah, the primordial plant, the Urplant. And he saw that this primordial plant had a built-in duality, like a plus and a minus, like in electricity, ion and a cation and anion. Well, it's the same here. This is kind of like an Ur house, not a Ur plant, but a Ur house. It has a built-in duality, or to use a word invented by this master of exasperated linguistics, Peter Eisenman, a two-ness. So T-W-O-N-E-S-S, a two-ness. That's what I see in these plans. It's good. It's good, and it's good even graphical, looking at the plan. It's intriguing, it's provocative. Certain things are not very explicit, not very clear, but that's how life itself is. And here are, handmade drawings for the, I think it's excellent. So I think a good architecture for our time cannot avoid assuming conflict, because conflict is part of our life. It always was, but in our time, because of so many interests and preoccupations and so many tensions, I think our life is so dynamic. Well, maybe not so much now with the pandemic, but if the pandemic goes away, life will become again quite dramatically dynamic. Ben van Berkel and UN Studio. I actually find the drawings, diagrammatic as they are, a little more interesting than the house. Because the house, I wish it had more color and more even or using some organic materials. In my opinion, the interior is a little, I mean, the physical reality of the house is a little bit colder than the drawings. The drawings have a warmth that somehow are only partially that somehow only partially is present in the interiors. I think these large surfaces of glass, essentially you only have large surfaces of glass and concrete. And I don't think it's enough. I don't think it's enough. I think, but I'm sure those the tensions within the plan can be experienced also living inside the house. I regret a little bit the materials used. Yes, I would have seen here an addition in terms of tectonics, maybe using, but then yes, you lose control when you use too many materials or a fragmentation. Like this seems to me a little problematic. I like more the drawings, it's true. Now, the music faculty and theater in Graz in Austria, towards the outside, it seems to be, clearly enveloped, building, but I think more complexities are to be found inside the building. And you can glance at them actually through the transparency of the envelope. UN Studio, Ben van Berkel, and you see indeed here, sinuosities, the labyrinth is present, ambiguous zones, and so on. But the floor and the ceiling are rather, flat. It's not quite an organic building, even inside. But there is conflict even in chromatically, because you have, imagine this red stair with a white, exterior. This redness is erotical, and it's engaging, it's enticing, and the whole sculptural, crystallization of this stair is, I think, promoting something almost opposite to the, to the appearance of the building towards the outside. This is often done where the public spaces within the building, the spaces of encounters, let's say hallways, the entrance into the building, is the space of encounters, of negotiations between maybe even large numbers of people. So, architecture expresses that. Otherwise, the building, even in these imperfect drawings, because they are too small, I mean, the pictures, seems to be rather quiet. But it has its moments of sculpturalness, which create that accident or that accidental reality without which our life is could be very boring and restrictive, restricting. It's still an interesting building, despite the fact that towards the outside, it's rather, but you'll see later works by them which are a little bit different, particularly what they built in Singapore. I hope I have here projects from the Villa NM, upstate New York, United States. It's very gray. I mean, the rendering here, I wish it's a little bit more colored in reality because of the grass, but the building is still rather cold, in my opinion. But it has these distortions, these twistings that creates some, tension, conflict. Otherwise, I mean, this facade, it's blank. Yes, it's mysterious because you can see through during the day. You only see the reflections of the trees in this reflective glass. It's perfectly done. It's a prism, perfectly done. I like, and here the distortion takes place. The Möbius, famous speculation, formal speculation. It's interesting, but it seems to me a little bit cold and contrived, a little bit forced. It's like people wearing dark glasses with reflective glass where you cannot see their eyes, so you stare at an unknown. Well, here we stare at an unknown. This building is an unknown because of the, yes, the reflections are beautiful because the trees are beautiful, but the building is essentially staring at us and at the trees, just like someone with reflective glass eyeglasses. I don't know. It's not one of my preferred buildings. I see here, this twisting, but otherwise the building seems to be cold. And I think it was, let's see if it didn't suffer in an accident. It was, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's not this building, but it might be this building. Now, you wonder, why did they do this? What is the meaning of this? Well, this could mean exactly the uncontrollable and uncontrolled side of life. Life is not just about calculation and measurement and reason. It has many, unplannable events taking place. So this, in a way, represents the unreason, the irrational. And the unreason is part of life. The building seems to be rational to an extent, at least in this side, but on this side. But we saw inside there are other things going on, like here, because of the the irritation of the twisting, so to speak. I still find it a cold building. Now, maybe people here felt, well, it's possible. I mean, a well-to-do family. But the building is cold. Yes, fire destroys UN Studios Villa NM, so it was affected by a fire. Look at this. Now you see that's how life is. You create a building which seems to be very confident in its well-being, although in a rather cold way, and then fire comes in and transforms it into something completely different, as you can see here. And it was not built with wood. You would even wonder, how come fire destroyed such a building? It had concrete, it had glass, it had metal, totally burned down, totally destroyed. So maybe when we do buildings, maybe when we build buildings, maybe we shouldn't be indifferent to possible happenings of this sort. And maybe we could anticipate them in some way, subtle or not, and comment on them, so to speak, architecturally. Now, the Mercedes-Benz Museum from 2001-2006 in Stuttgart, in Germany. Here is the concept, if we are to use a word I usually don't use, and I don't use it because I believe a true creation is more than just a concept. Even in real life, you don't give birth, you don't create a new life just through concept. Yeah, you need, if I am to express myself imperfectly, a wet concept. You need you need, but not to speak about the sentimental, the part of the process of giving birth, of creating a new life. The concept is the product of the brain. The heart doesn't work with concepts. You will never say the concept of my heart was this and that. I know architects love the word concept. Rem Koolhaas loves it too. And even Tina Turner, who is not an architect, who was not an architect, but a brilliant dancer and singer. I've heard her using the word concept. It's a very, very loved word. But in my opinion, it is so because we love the workings of the brain. We are obsessed with the brain. That's why we say continuously brainstorm, but not heart storm. Again, the heart does not work with concepts. The brain does. But I don't think you can truly create using just your brain. This is done mainly, you know, with speculative work, formally or otherwise, of the brain. And it works to an extent, but I still think the building, this, you know, very opulent building built for a very powerful car manufacturer, Mercedes, is cold. Now, maybe in this case, more appropriately, since it is about cars, it's not about, you know, family life, like in the house that we saw earlier. Maybe, but I'm not sure. I'm not sure that we need this kind of coldness, even in the case of a building for a, you know, a famous car brand. Yes, that, you see, that's what I use the word concept, because here it is again a concern with circulation. You see the red arrows, just like in that museum that we previously saw. Of course, it is important, but it still has to do with control, and it's contrived and it's crafted in brain terms, in my opinion. I don't know if I explained very well, but I think the building is cold. Does it need to be cold? Not necessarily, I would say. It has interesting parts, of course. It is well crafted, but it's still an object, an architectural object. And in my opinion, a great building is more than an object. It's not an object. A building is more than an object. Now look here, you know, very, you know, complex drawings, structural and otherwise. You cannot build such a building without computer technology. It's impossible. It is done. And it is done the German way and conceived the Dutch way. It was built, but I'm not very warmed up in the good sense of the word when I look at this building. Well, we see again the reddish stair, but it's about the only thing that is reddish in terms of color and in terms of symbolism. In the rest is literally a cold gray, I almost said bloody gray building. Yes, there is the twisting, there is the spiraling, and that is important, of course. But I still find here a larger percentage of the work being done by the brain, and I don't think it's enough. But maybe I'm old-fashioned, maybe I'm a sentimentalist, maybe I'm too romantic or whatever. Maybe this belongs to our time, essentially a cold time, obsessed by brainstorming and not heart storming. A theater agora, 2002-2007, also in the Netherlands. Now here, this one is more for my taste, because at least I see a different treatment of the opaque surfaces of the building, and also I see color, and it seems to be more alive somehow because of this reason. Maybe they don't think in the same way. Still, there are very large surfaces. I mean, the building is crafted well, but still I somehow have the feeling that, yes, he wants to bring life into the building. They want to bring life into the building through these complex manipulations of volumes. But I still somehow I find this as still being an object. But I find it more interesting than the previous building. It's true. Well, anyway, these people are experimenting. They are not stuck into a timid way of conceiving architecture. And you'll see is they are doing a lot of works now, and all very you know, uh, experimenting. So Ben van Berkel and the UN studio, I think essentially, and this must be said, perhaps we are dealing here with an architect who understood that life is not only reason, and he tries to bring, you see, through these, geometrical contortions, some of the unknown or, irrational aspects of life within the stomach of the building. And I think the attempt to bring reason and unreason together is a good one. Still, there is a level of coldness in the building. Yes, redness perhaps helps a little bit to warm up the building. But you see, there is a concern with avoiding the trappings of the straight wall and of the flat surface. In a way, this is what art does. Now, the research laboratory from 2003-2008 in Groningen, the Netherlands, we also witness a return of the ornament, because this is ornamental, clearly, and the ornament is coming back with great force after a century, almost a century of being neglected and rejected. Well, here is only in some parts of the building, like on this one, you don't see it. Now, the Galleria department store in South Korea, in Seoul, from the another country which, like China, is experimenting a lot. Let's read a little bit about this. The Galleria attempts to redefine the traditional typology of such a place, as changing societal norms in Asia have led supermarkets to operate as social and semi-cultural meeting places, according to Ben van Berkel. As a result, the project blends the functional aspect of a large-scale commercial store while placing emphasis on maintaining a sense of public space for social and cultural aspects. Well, let's talk a little bit about this. It's maybe the guilt of capitalism, obsessed as it is with consumption, and again consumption, to bring so-called culture in. But it's truly the marketplace, the place for culture. I mean, who goes to the mall to immerse himself or herself into culture or culturally? I'm not very convinced about it. The mall is about buying, selling and buying. It's not about, reading James Joyce or Shakespeare. But let's see what they did. The building, with all its so-called concerns for the social interactions and culture, is still a big condenser and container of merchandising, because that's what a mall is about: to sell and buy, and sell and buy. I shop, therefore I am, as Barbara Kruger said. And so I don't know. I mean, towards the outside we have color, towards the inside we have whiteness. I don't know. Would I go here to write a poem or to read a good book? I'm not sure. I'm not sure. I don't think I would. I would prefer to sit down on an old bench in a park to do that, not to go here. But again, this is about a capitalism which, in order to increase its revenues and its selling, understands that it needs also to amplify its rather, dirty obsessions with culture. Just like bankers are very preoccupied about accumulating paintings and have apparently a concern for art, so now supermarkets have a concern for so-called culture. But this is not, in my opinion, a truly genuine interest in what we call culture. What do we see here? Yes, technological sophistications about the enclosure, the envelope of the building. Because we are very good indeed at analyzing, of inventing new materials, of actually avoiding all the little troubles or not so little of real life through technology. And you know, we see here all kinds of things: inner layer, outer layer. You know, things are not so complicated, I think, but these are attempts to you know, diffuse you know, a more sincere relationship with what we call reality. So we have an isolated curtain wall glazing, we have strips of metal click profiles, we have what else do we have here? Closed back wall and open at special program locations. All these things are, you know, I repeat, I would still sit on an old wooden rotten bench in a deserted area of a park and read quite well without having to buy or sell anything. Now we see here, you know, of course, big curling arrows showing us how things are under control, the inside-outside relationship. This is a conceptual diagram expressing a conceptual approach to reality. But reality, I think, outdoes all of this. And in the end, these are just diagrams. It's a diagrammatical representation which works to a certain level, but not completely. Yes, the building is interesting, but when you think about what it means, what it actually is, this is a big container of commercial activities. That's what it is. And as Rem Koolhaas, the other Dutch architect, said, he called it the terminal of all human activity, shopping. It's about that, the raison d'etre of being alive. Essentially, this is what it is today, still, beyond the pandemic and climate change and so on. It's all about shopping, the terminal of all human activity. That's how Rem Koolhaas called shopping. I live in order to shop. And if I do not shop, I do not exist. What is the preoccupation of most people? To run to the mall and shop. Because what else is to do in life besides watching TV? UN Studio Office Tower, 2003, 2010 in Amsterdam. Well, it does look like an office tower, doesn't it? Does it need artificial air pumping? Of course it does. None of those windows opens. Is it sustainable? Of course not. But people still do such works with large surfaces of glass, and where you have such large surfaces of glass with windows that do not open, you bet you need a lot of air conditioning. Is the air conditioning polluting the world? Of course it does. Is the climate change affected by air conditioning? Of course it does. Is it a sustainable building? Of course it is not. Just like most buildings done by Foster and Associates, even those he claims are sustainable, they are not sustainable at all. It's just demagogy. 5 Franklin Place residential tower in New York City, 2006. So when Ben van Berkel of UN Studio first unveiled, this is a very beloved word today, unveiled his vision for 5 Franklin Place, the elaborate facade of layered strips offered a dynamic picture of what Tribeca newest architectural creation could be. A contemporary take of the area's traditional metal facades of the 19th century. The 20-story residential tower incorporated a series of metal bands that became the building's trademark. The black undulating lines served more than a mere aesthetic, as they branched from the building's vertical plane to become spatial entities, providing balconies for residents and even dual functioning as sun screens. Yet, as Liana Gray shared with Arch Record, Van Berkel's artistic vision may quickly be coming to a halt. Did you notice the word artistic? Well, Van Berkel is an architect. Why is it that the word artistic is present there? Because the truth of the matter is architecture without some form of art is not architecture. And an architect who does not have anything to do with art or the artistic visions is not an architect. And those who think that architecture is not an art should open any history of art and would see there architecture. Why is architecture present in the histories of art if it's not art? And the same person could open any book on science history, and architecture will not be there. So why is architecture present in every or almost every history of art and not present in any science history? Because architecture is closer to art. That's why. And those who do not acknowledge it are not telling the truth to themselves. The project began construction in the midst of the recession, causing it to be stalled just after it measured 2 stories. Currently, distressed property specialist, whatever his name, has been called onto the job to scale down the design. Exactly what is going to be scaled down is unclear, and we are worried that during this process, the building will most likely lose most of its architectural merit. However, it must be noted that this person, Procida, was able to get the financing for the tower back on track. The situation speaks to the dilemma of architecture and keeping within budget, a long struggle that the field has been subject to. And here it is in the project. So we understood only the first 2 floors were built with when that person was called in to adjust some things in order to make it feasible in terms of, respecting a certain budget. Yes, there are limitations. What can you do? I still find the building rather cold and a little bit pretentious and a little bit too gray for my taste. Sources of inspiration for 5 Franklin Place metal band facade and the drawing by Van Berkel. I found this image. I don't know. I mean, I see the fascination with the fabric, with textile work, and that's good. But I don't know. This is a different kind of material and a different kind of world. And this is warm. It's, I don't know, cotton perhaps. It's not metal. It's not this. Let's not fool ourselves. The wrinkles of the building are not like here on this textile material, on this fabric. And even the old building, which is straight, actually, with verticals and horizontals, seems to me to be more sensitive and more warm in a way, even though it might be gray itself, than this building. Anyway, maybe this is my subjective perception, but I'm glad that he experimented. He tried something different, something there is a twisting here of elements which complicated the budget, and that's why that person had to come in to do something about it if the building was to be built. Now, the Institute for Contemporary Art in Philadelphia, Holiday Home, it's an installation. We see here the same two-ness that I mentioned earlier with a term borrowed from Peter Eisenman. Also chromatically, you can see that two-ness or the tensions between the outside and the inside. This is an eternal theme in architecture, but I am happy that this architect and other architects are experimenting even through installations. How else are you to push forward architecture? Now, the Star Place department store in this place in Taiwan, again, okay, it's maybe enticing for the eye, but in essence, what does he do? What he does is trying to seduce you to get into the building and place your hand in your pocket and take your credit card and use it in order to shop, because it's a department store. It's supposed to sell. This is not the fascination with beauty that, for example, that Shah in India had when he built the Taj Mahal as an expression of lasting love for his wife who died. This is about, again, shopping and selling. So all this drama, all this visual drama is actually a tool for selling. And, you know, it might be ingenious, but when you think at its raison d'etre, it moves you less. You know, it's a melodrama, which an aesthetical melodrama, which has no other purpose but to, you know, seduce you to get in order to spend and spend and spend. Now, Education Executive Agency in this place in Groningen in the Netherlands, and tax offices. Wow. Well, you know, the mammoth of bureaucracy is in full display here. You know, who is ruling the world? They are ruling the world. You know, the tax offices, and I don't know about the Education Executive Agency. It sounds to me a little bit frightening. As frightening as the building. I don't like this building, you know. I'm tired of this kind of masculinist structures, you know, mimicking through some distortions here and there, a little bit of sensitivity. No, these are buildings meant to manifest their power and to show that they are ruling everything, you know, through bureaucracy, through taxes, through money, essentially. Because even education became an industry. You know, we should use such words, you know, the education industry, as we talk about film industry, music industry, and so on. Everything became an industry, you know, run by mega corporations, if not by the mega state machine. The Long Island bridges in Dubai, of course, they had to build in Dubai too. It's a bridge. It's good, you know, but I prefer the bridge completed by Elizabeth Diller Scofidio Renfro near that museum for handicapped people that they built. Is more elegant, and it's not in Dubai, it's in the United States. This one is also to an extent interesting, but I don't know. It's something a little bit strange here. You know, it's like these ships. They barely make it underneath the bridge. Usually, exactly in the middle, a bridge becomes taller or situated at a higher altitude. In this case, it seems to lower itself at the center, which is giving a strange feeling. The New Amsterdam Pavilion. New York City. Let's see. Yes, these diagrams are enticing. They are done by the computer, but they still, in my opinion, refer to some kind of I know I will express myself oxymoronically, brain emotionalism or cerebral emotionalism. Here they are. I don't know if this is Catherine on the right, but certainly on the left is Ben van Berkel. It's still an object, in my opinion. And I still think a good building is more than an object. It's porous. It communicates with the outside. This is, yes, it's twisted, it's ingenious, it's maybe even provocative. But it's, you know, this could easily be a small object that you put on a desk. You know, yes, it's built well, but I don't know. It's still an object. I consider it object architecture, and being object architecture, not quite architecture. I know I'm saying maybe outrageous things, but that's what I feel. The 2454 Media Center in Abu Dhabi. It's a project. Lots of glass there, no? And we talk about sustainability. You can imagine in none of these buildings you could breathe if there wasn't a great machine to generate artificially made air conditioning. You can't breathe there. In Abu Dhabi with all that glass, no window opens. So, today, many architects talk about sustainability, but the truth of the matter is we are still trapped in the seductions of eternally expanding surfaces of glass, giving us the illusion of being free and open and communicating with the exterior, while inside we would suffocate without any doubt if there wasn't a diabolically complex and expensive machinery technology that generated air. Yes, I call this the age of Anthropos, but this should end sooner or later. You turn a pavilion in Sao Paulo, Arte Biennale, another, for an installation, I guess is a little bit okay. We see here the dualities that we noticed before as well, white towards outside and some color towards inside. Yes, they are very good at twisting and bringing some kind of a turmoil to the volumes that create this object, because it's still an object. We remember the museum for the Mercedes-Benz, very similar to what we look at here now. I don't know. Anyway, yes, it does look space age and it does look otherworldly to an extent, but I still think it's rather cold, not to say frigid. No, hopefully, there is a human presence there, which changes a little bit some things, but the building itself, the structure is object-like and thus inert. Okay, the residence from 2006 2013, a residential tower in Singapore. Singapore was described to me by some people who teach there now as being the Switzerland of Southeast Asia. So they have a lot of money. And look here, of course, you cannot build something like this without a lot of money. Is it interesting? Yes, it is interesting. Is it cold? Yes, it is cold. But not in that sense that it saves you from, maybe the high temperatures in Singapore. I'm not very familiar with the climate there, but the building, I don't know. I mean, yes, visually it has some interesting things going on, but maybe it's too decorative somehow, too slick. This is slick architecture. And I think good architecture should not be slick. And look at all that water around, and what is that, a large swimming pool or something for the very rich ones to throw themselves into the water from the 10th floor of the building. This is, of course, built for, rich people. This is not a tower with the social interests of Le Corbusier and l'unité d'habitation. No, this is a building for the rich, who can live in such a building built in Singapore by Ben van Berkel. The Shenton Tower, also in Singapore, even more dramatic architecturally. Look at this. Wow. To be honest with you, it leaves me cold. Yeah, aesthetically, graphically, maybe I could have some interest in, but I don't know. Actually, I do know. I don't like it. And I don't like it because it's pretentious, it's expensive, it's arrogant, it's an arrogant architecture. Look what's going on there at the top. There are probably the spaces, the apartments for the gods. right? I mean, look at these huge surfaces of glass. These are, you know, a penthouse above another penthouse, or maybe three penthouses, one above the other, you know. But even the mortals underneath, they are not so mortal as me, for example, or some other people like me. No, this is a tower for you know, people who are already distanced from you know, the limited earth. I don't like these buildings, really. They are so, again, metallic and contrived and cerebrally, I will contradict myself now linguistically, cerebrally warmed up. How could you warm up something cerebral? You can't. If there is some life here, are these poor people living underneath this tree? Some immigrants, no doubt, having no place to go to, you know. Here is a sign of life. Here it is not. I am sorry. I mean, the arrogance of this opulent Singapore towards such people, and not only towards such people, even towards the trees, you know. Fortunately, there is this tree and there is the other tree, and there are these people, you know, so-called normal people, you know, who do not have the money to buy an apartment here, which probably costs millions. Am I against the rich? To an extent, in the sense that why should some people, you know, have huge amounts of money while other people, even though working hard, I'm not talking necessarily about these people. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe these people are not working very hard. Maybe they were rejected by the system. They are not contributing to the consumption efforts of present day society. I don't know. But a person, as my father used to say, if you work, you have no time to earn. So no, these people are not hardworking people. These are people who make money, you know, through financial speculations or who knows what, and certainly not the people at the top. These are not part of the same human race that I belong to. No, this is about something else. It actually saddens me what I see here. It's something sad. What gives me hope is here at the bottom, in the shadow of this tree. It's true. Yes, it's done well. The craft of crafting the building is there, of course, you know, using you know, sophisticated softwares and technology. But all in all, it leaves me hope. It leaves me hopeless. I mean, you know, what's this rift, zigzagging rift here? You know, it's an infatuation, a formal infatuation. Do you see any open glass here? Well, we see one here, something, but I don't know what's going on here. Otherwise, the whole thing is not opening a window. You know, I mean, how come? To be honest with you, I would have liked to see some hanged clothes outside in the balcony. Yes, in the wind. But no, that would be a sign of primitivism. And what is at the top is pathetic. I'm sorry. Do you launch you know, things here like from NASA, you know, into cosmos? What's going on here? Again, I would gladly read a book, a good book, on the grass near those sleeping people under the shadow of that tree, than to live in this monstrous you know, pretentious tower, because we still the masculinist obsession with towers is for all to see. All these distortions, we look at this, you know, and we think of the endless column by Brancusi. Well, the endless column by Brancusi expressed a longing of man for the above, being a conjunction between the earth and the sky. I don't see this here at all. You know, it's just a decorative, you know, titillation of the surface of the building. That's it. Sorry, Mr. Ben van Berkel, but I'm not convinced about this building. Yes, technically there are incredible sophistications here, no doubt. But is this a triumph of man over nature? Is it outsmarting nature? Well, if it is, I think it is a disastrous one and a sad one. Look here, all these explanations, about all kinds of things, the angled, fritted and coated glass in top, like, come on, open a window, please, for God's sake, just open a window, but you can't because the building is hermetically closed. And are trees supposed to be there inside the building, behind the glass, trapped there? I'm not convinced at all about this trend in the present to bring trees inside the building. It's again the control of the human being over nature. Let's remove the tree from its roots, with its roots, of course, from the earth, bring it to the balcony, trap it in there, and with all kinds of calculations, through the hard work of all kinds of specialists and scientists, make it survive there, for the benefit of who? Of Anthropos, of Homo sapiens, who still wants to control nature with almost obsessionally. And I'm against this. I'm really sorry for these trees which are, tortured by so-called Homo sapiens here for his benefit. We only think of him, its majesty, Anthropos, its majesty, the human being. And then we complain that the climate is changed. Well, and we have the icebergs melting, and we have the disappearance of countless species of the plants and animals, and so on. Look at these poor plants here in this balcony, screaming for help, almost losing the battle for their own lives. This is the arrogance of man in the age of man. It really revolts me. But what can I do? Mercedes is there, the building, apparently glorious, but in essence, they say no to life. That's what I see. Maybe I'm in a pessimistic mood, but that's what I feel. Le Toison d'Or in Brussels, Belgium. Well, this one has some qualities in the sense that it refers to, in a simplified form, to Art Nouveau, which was important in Belgium, through the works of Victor Horta, and not only him. Here it is, bridging between the abstract and the figurative. And I think this attempt to bridge between the abstract and the figurative is a positive one. This is a schematic sketch of Ben van Berkel. This is the building. Still this whiteness that he doesn't seem to easily get rid of. But in terms of shape, I see a certain organicity that connects, as I said, with the Art Nouveau of Belgium and Brussels as well. So in my opinion, this work is better actually, and is not crashing the urban tissue. You see, it respects the height of the adjacent buildings, maybe forced by the volume urban requirements. Sometimes I guess regulations do good things. As for this bathroom, I don't know. Is this in one apartment? I mean, aren't we too obsessed by kitchen and bathrooms? I mean, do I live in order to eat, or I eat in order to live? How is it? This incredible obsession with bathrooms, more and more opulent and rich and designed, and kitchen the same way. Kitchens also, it shows clearly the very problematic, if not to say tragic, materialism of our time. But the building towards outside, has some interest, I think, and is not doing violence to the building on the left. It's still a modern building, it's still kind of whitish, it's still kind of frigid, and it is cold, but because of this curvature, somehow is able to But if you compare it with the building by Victor Horta, there you see not just curvatures, but you also see different materials. The see a miniaturization also of some parts of the building, a fragmentation, which adds to the feeling more intimately connected with the human scale and so on. But I still think this building is a little better than what we saw in Singapore. But the interior, in my opinion, is cold. Again, you know, sleek surfaces, perfectly built, clean and all the rest, large surfaces of glass, pumping air conditioning, no doubt, otherwise you couldn't live here. Would I like to live in such a building? No. I confess, no. What do we see at the bottom? The apple, you know, from which a bite was taken. That's why we're removed from paradise. You know, selling expensive, beautifully designed objects again. I actually, because I talked a few days about Steve Jobs on the occasion of the launching of the first personal computer, which I like very much. I think, I mean, I don't know, I could be wrong, but it's possible he also got sick because of this fetishization of the object, of the Apple production, the products, you know. I remember how he used to come to show to an ecstatic audience, large audience, the latest gadget invented. Come on, Mr. Steve Jobs, please, you know, it's just a gadget, for God's sake. It was not made by God. It's an object. If it doesn't have electricity or a battery, it's dead, totally dead. A blade of grass, the one we stamp on, is much more alive than the most beautifully crafted, ingenious little object made by Apple or some other companies. A blade of grass doesn't need electricity or a battery to grow towards light. It does so naturally. It's alive. Any product done by human beings, including the beloved Mercedes, is dead if it doesn't have artificially produced energy. Is the building interesting? Is, but I'm not sure I prefer it to the building on the left. Maybe this is my regressive side talking. I don't know, maybe. Zara, of course. You know, like somebody told me, you know, I would rather go to a museum where I could also contemplate things which I cannot purchase. Although Zara is not so expensive compared to, you know what, you know, like Prada or other high-end, you know, outlets of high-end designers where a belt costs thousands of euros, which is ridiculous. But for people living in the buildings by Ben van Berkel, is actually affordable. It's possible. So UN Studio Ben van Berkel weaves an immersive pavilion for the Revolution pref-crafted series. What words, revolution. But I like the word weave because the word architect is born from the ultimate etymological root, text, which means in Proto-Indo-European language to weave. And here it is. It is woven. It's true. It is woven, but it's so perfectly woven that, in my opinion, is still an object. So continuing towards its goal of creating design-forward structures that are available to the public and installable anywhere, Revolution Pre-Crafted series has unveiled its latest, again, the word unveiled. I'm against this word because it's so pretentious, you know, unveiled, as if you unveil something sacred, you know. Its latest pavilion designed by Ben van Berkel, founder and principal of UN Studio. The limited edition, again, this is a marketing strategy, ellipsicune, wow, what a word, the portmanteau of ellipse and cocoon, is available now through Revolution Pre-Crafted's website, joining the selection of prefabricated pavilions and single-family home designs by the likes of Zaha Hadid, Jean Nouvel, and Daniel Lipskin. Yes, I'm attracted, of course, by these fluidities and these curvatures, but everything is so perfectly done that in essence, I think it's almost in contradiction with the material used, because there is no room here for the beautiful imperfections of nature and life alike. So with a floor area of only 15 square meters, we are really approaching, I think this is the last project I show in this presentation. The ellipsicone is intended as an outdoor retreat for reconnecting with nature. Come on, please, if I want to reconnect with nature, I just take a walk in the woods. But this is my opinion. The ellipsicone pavilion is a space for the mind, that is for the brain, not for the heart. For moments of ephemeral escape, of course, escape from whom and from what? From a boring office life, concerned only with production, and then consuming, for rumination or for simply being. Wow, simply being, as if life is such a simple thing, says the architect, explaining that the structure is ideal for reading, contemplation, intimate conversation, and solitary restful moments. The woven design underscores this function, surrounding those inside with its swooping curved form while maintaining a connection to nature through its gaping openings. And let's look at it. Yes, it's a concern with the same fluidities that we have seen in the works of others and even in their own works. I still consider it a cold work. A work which actually is not inducing in me a sense of freedom, a sense of, being connected with the disorder of life as it is, lived unpretentiously. Yes, formally is interesting, but the perfection of the execution actually turns me off. As opposed to a Gothic cathedral or old buildings, the older the better, where you saw the human touch and the imperfections of individual touches, individual hands, even unskillful ones. Here everything is controlled, yes, through forms, through twistings, through spirals, but still obsessionally controlled. The pavilion's continuous surface is woven from 100% recyclable high-density polyethylene, which evokes the appearance and porosity of wicker furniture. It might evoke it, sorry, Mr. Ben van Berkel, but it's still polyethylene, okay? Let's not compare it with wicker, with the durability necessary for permanent outdoor installation. While most of the fibers are colored a natural brown hue, accenting strands in electric. Why electric? What does electricity have to do with wicker? Blue emphasizes the ellipsicone's digitally developed contours. What does this mean, digitally developed contours? Means controlled contours. That is the opposite of freedom, because it's too much control, aesthetical and otherwise. The plan of the amoebic pavilion includes an entry space that elevates visitors over a covered, sunken seating pit. This is the diagram, and yes, even the diagram says a lot. It's artificial, it's contrived, it's cold, and it's born from the brain, a brain which finds escape in the irrationalities of these curves, but not in the so-called irrationalities of a different material or materiality. Is the same escape through brain games into an artificiality that tries to tell you you are free. You are not free. Even this sketch here is not free. Now, the Melbourne skyscraper, I think this is the end thing. UN Studio and Cox Architecture have officially been announced as the winners of Melbourne's landmark South Bank precinct overhaul, selected from a range of high-profile offices, including Big, OMA, and MED. UN Studio vision for the 2 billion project includes a pair of twisted, twisted towers called Green Spine, of course, green. This is the fashion. As the largest single phase project in the history of Victoria, Australia, the Green Spine is designed as a state-of-the-art mixed-use environment centered around innovation in architecture and design. Let's look at it. Wow. Well, you know, essentially it's not very different from the valley in Amsterdam by MVRTV, except that these are much taller. But this, you see here the same dualities. On one hand, office work, office space with these, you know, boring glass, huge surfaces, and then twisting into so-called green spaces, green areas. So it shows the dualities of work and play, or work and living. Here we have the so-called living. Here we have the so-called dying, because this is the office work, the boring work from 9 to 5, 5 days a week in these offices where, again, I don't see any window opening. Do you see any window opening in the rendering? No. I am telling you now something outrageous. I wish I saw a string coming from a balcony here and going to a balcony here, and on it having hanging clothes like an Italian town, Sicilian or not. But I will never see that, because that would be considered uncivilized. These towers, to me, announce the end of the age of Anthropocene. You know, because it's the human being at his most perverse emancipation. I don't see optimism actually in this. I'm sorry. The buildings are taller and taller. Look at these windows. None opens. All of this giant building is aired with artificial air. You wouldn't be able to breathe here in Australia or in some other place without a huge machinery which produces artificial air. So this paradisiacal, you know, enjoyable imagery is actually just a marketing tool to sell the project. The twisting is giving me the illusion of organicity and freedom, but it's just an illusion. Everything is under control here. Tight control, that is. Ah, yes. Diagrams, beautiful, cerebrally, you know, perfect, but I'm not convinced. I want to see some of the naturalness of life, but I don't see it. Maybe a little bit in the sketch, but what the sketch began as, it was not really follow through. It's still a mega structure, a mega building, conceived and built by high-end capitalism, which finds it amusing to twist things ad infinitum. The cars are still there, you know, polluting the world, even if, let's say, they are all electrical. Even electrical cars pollute, because electricity needs to be produced in some form. No, it's not a product of nature. That's it. So let's wish happy birthday to Ben van Berkel for yesterday. And so that's it for today. Thank you.